This is Business Talk, your business, your success. Sponsored by Take Action Business Coaching. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and may not be the views of the staff, advertisers, and owners of the station. Advice given is not intended to replace that of your business advisor. Now, let's get down to talking about your business, your success. This is Business Talk.
Well, here we go, Peg.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Peg and Pete. I love it. I love being back here, Pete.
Good afternoon.
Good
yes.
afternoon.
And happy football season to everybody.
Yes, terrific time.
Yes.
Terrific time. And I have to tell you, I love Pete. Pete, you titled our show today, and I just love it.
Oh, yeah. So you're the boss.
So
dot,
you're
dot,
the
dot,
boss.
or
I
a
like
question
it.
mark, however you want to do it. You could have a question mark and some dots because sometimes it's a little confusing, right?
I like that. Yes.
Am I supposed to take out the trash or what am I supposed to do?
I know.
here?
So what are we going to teach today? What is the teaching?
Well, you know, the thing is we work with a whole variety of companies, and Peg, help me if you need to. We do some executive coaching with some bigger firms, and then the bulk of our business is 20 to 200 employee firms that are around the Midwest and a couple scattered in other places, but mostly in the Midwest. And they're all growing rapidly, and we're all trying to find employees for most of these firms. So we want to be able to retain the great people we have, and we also want to attract some new people. And you're in charge of this rapidly growing organization, and sometimes there just aren't enough people to get everything done.
Right. Exactly.
And so there are a whole bunch of articles that we did a little research during the week, and there are a whole bunch of things that pop up, like how you take care of yourself, how do you handle different types of employees, which we run into all week long. And there's a lot of different some tips in here that'll be fun.
And here's an idea as you're listening. Now, keep in mind, you can go to our website, takeactionbusinesscoaching.com.
Right.
Takeactionbusinesscoaching.com. And listen to this show in its entirety or other archived shows. Equally, having some of your younger managers or new managers listening to this as well will always help you.
Sure.
So,
yeah, and one of the articles we're going to talk about is Generation Z. Now, we've talked about different generations before, but that's the next generation that's coming up after X. And it's 70, what does it say here? It's at 67 million people.
We have
those born roughly beginning in 1997 up until a few years ago. The previous generation was millennials from 81 to 96 of 72 million people. So it's about the same size as the millennials.
To give our listeners, so in generation speak, it was baby boomers, right?
Yeah.
Then it goes from baby zoomers to X's, right?
I think so.
And then from X's, it goes to, they called it Y or millennials. That's used somewhat interchangeably.
Right.
And then you're saying, now, the way that generations are called nowadays is through the media. That's why Y became Z.
Okay.
I mean, why it became millennials. Because based on popular opinion and based on the media, they actually end up naming the generation. So
Gotcha.
That's why it started as Y and it sort of merged into millennial. So there was a little confusion there. So now what we're saying is the Z, it seems to be the most popular right now as far as the naming of that generation.
And it's basically a bubble of people, a group about the same size as Generation X coming through.
And do you know how they figure out what age groups and what years the generations are created?
I don't know. They got a dartboard somewhere in a bar?
Well, here's a little tidbit. So when they created the baby boomers, the name baby boomers as well as the years in which determined that generation were based on the Census Bureau. That's why it's the most consistent to any generation. Anything after that, again, goes back to the media. The media determines the years. That's why you can go to one reference and it's this amount of years, and you go to another reference and it's different years.
Because you still hear a lot about millennials, but not as much as Generation Y, that kind of thing.
Yes. So Ys became millennials. So millennials overtook the Y. At first we heard Y, like Y size your business, creating Y. And then it became millennials, and that merged in. And so now, to your point, it's Z, and the age group, so the media has to determine how big that will be.
Yeah.
And so we'll see
and there's
how
some specific things about managing those people
that
are a little
that
different
today.
than the X's.
We'll talk about the generations. Very good.
So first, let's do a little good news. Why do we do the good news?
Well, the good news is all about what we're focusing on and putting our attention and energy on. It's really easy to look at negativity, especially in the news, because that's what we're fed.
Right.
And so we're going to give you some good news of what's happening all around the world.
Yeah. So we got a little chart here, and Peg, you can go, ooh, on that chart.
Ooh.
Worker registration, or workers register the highest satisfaction on jobs since 2005. Slightly more than half of U.S. workers said they were satisfied with their job in 2017, the highest level since 2005. In 12 years, people are a little more happy on the job, which is a good thing.
I love it.
Right? Weekless job claims remain subdued, blah, blah, blah. You know about that. Median household income rose 1.8% in 2017. And if you actually look at this chart, it is on the way up.
It looks really high. You should see this chart. So it has it for years, right? Yeah. And so if you look down at like 2005. 2005, it wasn't so awful. 2010, it went way down. Way down.
Yeah, and there's another article here. It says wages gain, payrolls rises, expansion rolls ahead. And it's a longer-term chart showing the number of hours worked and how much money people are making, and it is going up.
But here's the thing that you may want to consider as an owner or a manager. We have a lot of our companies, Pete, giving raises to their workforce right now.
Yes. Because
workforce is tough. I mean, there's more jobs out there right now than there are people to work in them.
Correct. That's right.
And so if you want to keep your people, you need to pay them a fair, if not more than fair wage in order for them to stay. Yeah. We always say just go to the right of the bell curve, right?
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, wherever the peak is, wherever the median is, we want to be a little bit ahead of that. And then it's also okay to expect a little more than that, right?
Right.
Because we pay very well here.
Right.
We treat people well, right? That's the other part of it. The other thing, and this is interesting, there's a photograph in this article. It says unfinished Boeing jets pile up at factory. So they've had some supplier issues where they've got jets that are almost done and they can't ship them because they need parts. I mean, it's unbelievable. They got billions of dollars worth of equipment that can't ship because we don't have
That's
the
not
parts.
A good thing.
So,
that's not.
But it's a sign of the economy is cranking, right? And everybody's pushing really hard.
Right.
I wonder if we're going to get our Christmas gifts on time. I hope we do, right? Because I've read some articles about FedEx and some of these other companies that are adding staff, automating things even more so they can get more and more packages out.
Well, if you think the automation, that's really what we're all turning to. If you've been to a McDonald's recently, and maybe even a Wendy's, you'll see automation that you go up and you order through a screen versus a person. And it's because they're driving, their prices have really remained the same. So if they want to be profitable, labor's a big cost. So they have to get that labor out of there, and the dependability of the computer is there. And I think that's what you're seeing is the automations with everyone, because it is hard to get people, and they are, it is unpredictable. So that is interesting.
The other one, this is a cool one. This is a picture of a big tanker. So we've got these gigantic ships going across the ocean carrying maybe half of the world's trade. Mm-hmm. And some companies are putting in these sails. And it's funny, they look like a big pipe in the middle of the ship. And all it does is catch some of the wind. And it cuts their fuel cost by about 10%. It's amazing, what they're doing to try to squeeze a little bit more out of the energy.
Pipes, because if you look at it, it's not a sail at all.
Doesn't look like a sail.
It's just a cylinder is what it is.
Right, exactly.
It's two cylinders, and they're saying that acts as the wind pushes again.
Exactly.
That's engineering for you. I love it.
Yeah, and the last bit of good news, now we've had some storms, right? It's hurricane season, and God bless the folks that have been affected by these things, the rain and other things, but one of the things, and this is because we have some engineering companies that work with us and remodeling companies and land developers. There's an article here about a Texas town, and they're requiring different things being done on the roofs of materials, roofing materials, things to hold the houses together to make them stronger. And sometimes the building codes, we may think they're onerous and they hurt us. But on the other hand, in places like the coastal areas, it's reducing the number of fatalities. It's reducing the destruction that happens when there's a hurricane. So these things are good, and they're actually helping people get through storms that 50 years ago they would have been flattened.
Oh, that's good news.
Anyway, it's pretty interesting.
Well, good news, Pete. Good job, Director Pete.
Here we go.
Coming up with good news. And so today, again, this is Peg and Pete with Business Talk, and our topic today is, so you're the boss? Or is that what it is?
Yeah, so you're the boss, question mark.
Question mark.
How are you going to deal with all these things? You got all kinds of things you're juggling, right? Keeping employees, right? We talked about that. And then we've got younger and younger employees coming into the workforce, and they have slightly different values.
And we're going to cover this, but Pete, before we do, I wanted to just tell our listeners that we have a program that we have created for companies / managers, and you could send them to one of our programs where we are helping. It's called Developing the Leader Within You, and we are developing the future leaders. And it's a very affordable price where you can send them.
Program.
It's a group program, right. And that's why it's very affordable. And if you have a manager or a new person that you're like, you know what, I have not been giving them any training, and I know as I'm talking to you guys, you're sitting here thinking, that's me. I have a manager, I've given them no training, I've just told them go out and do it, here's your direct reports, go, and I haven't given them any of the tools. We have a program 2 ways. One's a webinar, and then the other one is an in-person program for the developing the leaders within, and it's 1 day a week, 1 day a month, for a couple hours, and then we talk 2 weeks later, so in between that time, to help develop the leader within. So in addition to this program you're listening to, that would be another program you could get into.
So if you're interested in that, you can give us a call at 614-306-7922. And we're going to talk some more when we get back about all the challenges you have as a leader and some of the innovative things you can do to help yourself get through it.
To learn more about today's topic, call 614-306-7922. Now, back to more business talk.
So we're talking today, our topic is about you're the boss, and you've got all these challenges. So let's start off with something. What about you? You're one of the first things I've got here is an article about exercise, and it's talking about you really do need to consider, if you're a manager or an owner of a business, is taking care of yourself.
Well, and I liked what you saying where you started with that, Pete. Whenever, and Pete and I, we also are on Daytime Columbus with NBC4. And in fact, if you look in our website, you'll see some of our archived TV shows there. And one of the things we said there when we were talking about this topic is it starts with you, because that's where it all comes from.
Right.
And I liked what are you doing to grow, to learn, and that includes you physically.
And with you, it's your mindset.
Right.
And your emotional well-being is extremely important. And I like the picture on here. It's basketball. They're playing basketball. Now, it doesn't mean that's the best exercise, but they did say, this is kind of interesting. It said researchers found that those who exercised between 30 and 60 minutes had the best mental health, with 45 minutes the optimal duration. Exercising 3 to 5 times a week correlated with fewer darker days where you're a little down or you have a little edge.
That does make sense. And you know, Pete, we're not, we do what we say. We do, what we preach, and we do work out 4 to 5 times a week.
Right.
And
with one of our clients. 4
to 5 times, and I find that optimum. I feel like if I do too many in a row, like if I do 3, it wears me down. It has the opposite effect.
Now, they said that, and this is a study that analyzed over 1.2 million U.S. adults, so it's a pretty long-term, a pretty big study. They said over 90 minutes of exercise, there isn't an extra benefit.
90 minutes at a time or 90 minutes in a week?
At a time. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So 30 to 45 minutes is great.
That's what we do.
Doing a lot more than that, it's not going to help you all that much.
We did a heck of a workout for 30 minutes that was exhausting the other day. It was called I created it called the Fast Core Workout, and I could barely move.
Overall, people who exercise reported having 2 poor mental health days in the previous month compared with 3.4 on average for those who didn't exercise at all. That translates into a 43% improvement in mental health for those who exercise, the doctor said. So, isn't that interesting?
And it's interesting as we coach you, and we're your coaches today because you're listening to us. One thing we want to tell you is to work out.
Yeah, take care of yourself.
Take care of yourself. It's really important. We want you to learn, we want you to be healthy, and we want you to work out. Okay, so that's strategy number 1.
Yeah, strategy number 1. So there's another one that's related to you. You remember that commercial with the Snickers bar, and I don't know who it was. Somebody turns into Danny DeVito or something, and
all crabby.
Yeah, you're hangry.
Yeah,
you get hangry. Well, hangry has made it into the Oxford English Dictionary. Put hangry into its book this year.
Where did hangry come from? Like, who created that phrase? I love it. Does it say it there?
The popularity of the term outstripped the scientific research. He agrees that food deprivation can contribute to hypersensitivity to react to things you wouldn't react to normally when you're not hungry. However, food deprivation exacerbates other feelings, too. If we had a list of 10 negative emotions, my guess is that as people got hungrier, the scores of most of the negative emotions would go up, not just anger. So you might get more emotional about other things.
That makes all the sense in the world.
I'm not really sure where it came
from.
Oh, here we go. It made news when U.S. Olympic snowboarder Chloe Kim tweeted about the condition when she skipped part of her breakfast. I don't know when that was, how long ago that was. But anyway, it's kind of funny.
And she said, I'm hangry.
Yeah, so a couple of the studies they had in here, it cites a 1945 Minnesota starvation experiment. This is an extreme example. Of the male volunteers who lost 25% of their body weight in 6 months, most reported irritability and a decrease in mental ability. They also point to another study of 8 Israeli judges. This is a funny one, well, interesting one, who granted 65% of convicts parole requests in the morning and almost none at the end of the day.
Now, that study was done not just there. So Pete and I were reading a book called When by Daniel Pink. It is a great book, talks just about that. It's when do you make the decisions and when should you? If you read that book, it talks about everybody has an optimal window of decision making.
Yeah.
And it's really based on, they call it being an owl, which would be a more of an evening person, or what are those people that get as an animal?
A beaver?
No, it starts with an owl. Lark. So they say you're owl or lark.
Okay.
So if you're a lark, to give you perspective, you probably want your decision making to be like more in the mid morning to the mid afternoon. And then it's different times, but that was done. And they did parole. It wasn't judges, but it was other parole officers.
I mean, good grief,
so
man.
Thinking about looking at your meeting schedule and looking at the times you have arranged, when would be a good time for you
You're
to
the boss, and you're going to have we call it a significant, a significant emotional event. You're going to have a very important meeting with a high-profile employee, or you're going to have a contract negotiation. Try to do it in the morning. The other thing they suggest here...
in the morning, or read the book when, because then I don't have it in front of me, but it's when is it? You calculate your time.
And this doctor, his name is Dr. Lowe, he recommends distributing food intake evenly across the day. In other words, 10:30, 11 o'clock, have a snack, even if it's small, because you're the boss and everybody's looking to you all the time to see if you're positive. And if you're not, it's not going to help you. Right? So we want you as a leader to, again, take care of yourself. And it says the same hormones we release to motivate us to act are also linked to irritability. And hangry feelings are evolutionary kind of things. So there's not much you can do about it other than eat a little more frequently.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So it's a real thing.
I like it.
Right.
Okay. And so, again, this is Peg and Pete with Business Talk. We're talking today about So You're the Boss, ? And we're giving you some strategies and ideas on how to truly lead and step up. And we started with, just to revisit, a little bit about exercise and a little bit about food and being in the right frame of mind.
Right. So the next one here, we've got a little discussion about car dealers. The title of this, and I thought you'd be interested in this, because we've done a lot of work with companies that are engaged in sales, business to business, business to person.
Right.
Car dealers labor to keep young workers, so they're having a tough time. Nearly 60% of dealership hires are millennial workers, and more than half of those new hires turn over annually. So 50% turnover, and they're hiring 60% of their workforce from that same group that's turning over 50% of the time.
Now, did you tell me this story, or did I hear it from someone else, how they're having trouble getting people to stay, these car dealers?
I think I mentioned this to you when I read it the first time, because this was just a few days ago.
This is interesting.
And the whole United States turnover averages, believe it or not, only 10%. So they're having a heck of a time. They're 50% turnover amongst this group. And millennials are especially too adverse to working in dealerships because they carry more debt than other generations. They're looking for stable pay, and a lot of it's commission-based. They said there's also an outdated approach to selling that doesn't always fit their values. Even if the jobs have the potential to pay well, they may not stay because they don't like how they approach sales.
Oh, that's
Isn't that interesting? Younger workers aren't interested in haggling with customers and are far less tolerant of bait-and-switch advertising, boys club atmosphere, and some of the things. So they have to think differently and start adjusting a little bit to their workforce.
Oh, that is interesting. Okay, so that you car dealers listening. And you know what? I wonder how many other industries, even though they picked out car dealers, I mean, that's probably other industries as well. I mean, I don't know which ones they are, but it's got to be similar to anyone that's like that. High sales, different techniques, lots of haggling, because that's not our culture, nor is it the culture of the generation coming up as the millennials, it appears.
Some dealers are instituting no haggling policies where the dealer sets an advertised price, sticks to it, relieving salespeople having to negotiate. Others are increasing pay, shortening workday hours, offering perks such as free college tuition for employees. The average car salesman earns $44,000 a year, much higher than the average pay of $27,000 a year for all retail sales positions. So they do have the potential to earn more.
That's
but
interesting.
It's just kind of interesting.
Okay, I got it. All right. What's another category? I like this one. So Pete's picking up this. I like this a lot.
So you remember Seinfeld, right?
In fact, I just watched this.
I haven't watched them for a
this
while.
episode, Pete, last week. Oh my gosh, this one you're about to talk about.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So what did she do? She
exclamation mark.
Was she writing a letter? It wasn't an email.
No,
it couldn't have been an email.
I happened to just watch this because I love Seinfeld. So
it was Elaine,
she has a
right?
boyfriend. Yeah, it's Elaine, and she has a boyfriend, right? Yeah. And she comes home, and the boyfriend gives her a message that her friend had a baby.
Okay.
She goes, "Oh, so-and-so had a baby. That's great. That's great." And then she's like, that's a really big deal. Why didn't you put the exclamation mark? And the boyfriend's like, well, I mean, so what? She's having a baby.
It's a statement. Yeah.
And then Elaine starts getting into this argument that obviously, what are you thinking of? That's an exclamation mark.
Exclamation
That's worthy
point?
of it. And he's saying no, and they get into this whole fight over an exclamation mark. And then, of course, he leaves, and she's like, exclamation marks all over the place. So that was the scene.
Yeah.
So that sets up this article.
Yeah. So let's see. John Wojcicki was trying to make some progress on a work project one day this summer when he fired off more than 24 emails. The 30-year-old tax accountant ended with a message: "Thanks in advance for your help with this project." The notes caught the attention of his manager, who instant messaged him. She was like, "You're not your normal cheerful, bubbly self. You're not using exclamation points." So she got on him for not using exclamation points, for not using them. And then
that's why Elaine got mad at the boyfriend, because he didn't use them either.
And it could be a disc thing, right?
Yes,
a behavior profile.
We call it a behavior profile. Some people are all like, demonstrative, and some people aren't, and that's just
And this gentleman said he didn't know how to react. He's like, "What? I just said what I was thinking." Exclamation points are stressing people out. Years of rampant use have both diluted the punctuation mark's meaning and inflated its significance. It's especially bad in the workplace if you're the boss, where an exclamation point can suggest anything from actual excitement and gratitude or general friendliness to reassurance that 2 p.m. works for a meeting. "I'm not mad about the other day. I swear it's fine!" Exclamation point.
I would normally not use an exclamation mark in that point.
And this gentleman, he said he decided he'd no longer mimic the exclamation point use of others in his emails, which he previously did to not seem rude. So, 2016 study of 126 undergraduates by Binghamton University, State of New York, found that ending sentences with periods in a text was interpreted as abrupt and insincere. Since email and text have become substitutes for spoken conversation, people started using punctuation for emphasis and tone instead of a way to just mark the end of a sentence. So we've changed the way we, quote, speak.
But what's interesting about that is, at the beginning of the show, we talked a little bit about generations and the difference in generations. And based on your generation of where you are is how you will text. In other words, if you're under the age of 35, I want to say you're not going to use punctuation in your text.
At all.
And I think if you're over the age of 35, then you're more likely to use punctuation.
Well, like
in your
spelling
text.
even, right?
Spelling,
I'll go back
commas.
and correct something.
Commas. And so I hear that, like that probably has a generational thing too, with, a period at the end of a sentence.
Huh.
Isn't that
so you've got to deal with those kind of things at work too, right?
Well, you have to be sensitive, I think, to emails in general, of how people will take it, how they come across. I just was interviewing a team member for a company, and they said, This woman just emailed, 4 words in a sentence, and they took it the wrong way, and it ruined their weekend because it was so abrupt.
Really?
It didn't have the emotion or the description that they understood what she wanted. So it was a rough weekend.
Could your business use some help? Call 614-306-7922 to schedule your coaching session. 614-306-7922. Now, here's more business talk.
So we're talking today about You're the Boss, and what are all the different challenges that you have going on in your workplace?
Right.
You're really busy. Everybody's really busy. You're trying to get a lot of work done. You're trying to hire as fast as you can. Orders are coming in, and you don't want to turn work away, right? Of course.
Yes. And
you want to take care of your customers like you did 5 years ago when you weren't quite as busy. And you've got all these challenges. And you've also got some workers that you don't, your natural reaction may not be the thing they want to hear.
Right. And right before the break, we talked about even like looking at your emails and the use of exclamation marks or are how you phrase emails and how important they are, because I just mentioned that we had done an interview with some people, and one of the complaints was, well, when they send me an email, it's very abrupt, it's very quick, and it can ruin my weekend.
Yeah, it actually happened.
It just happened. That actually just did happen. But one thing that I was telling Alan was talking about commas, and we were talking about the use of punctuation in text messages. And Alan says, hey, I want to know this. Why is it that, I see a period and then I see two spaces? Now, from our generation.
He puts two spaces in.
He puts two spaces in.
Because he's been trained.
Now, I was trained that way too. And so it became an argument. So we have two daughters, Allie, who is 17, and Lauren, who is 14. And they're in Upper Arlington. And we had John and myself, my husband's John, and the four of us were having this actual debate of what was right. And I'm like, I know that it's two spaces. Like, I'm going to put all the money in China on this. Like, this is it. So we looked it up on the internet. Yeah. And it's actually not accurate anymore. They said back in the old days, they did that with typewriters because it was for typewriters. They said, but now that we don't have typewriters, it's single space is the new recommended way.
So do you put a space between the period and
just
the next?
Just
one
one
space.
Not two.
Okay.
You put a space, but just one space, now that it's not a typewriter anymore.
Oh, that's what I do. I do one space.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so Alan and I do two spaces. But they said that was because it was a typewriter thing. And so now it's not, since it's not typewriter.
But it's not zero spaces.
No, it's one space.
It's one space. Okay.
So that's
Is it still a QWERTY keyboard? It looks like a typewriter to me.
But it had something to do, I can't remember exactly, but the mechanics of the typewriter, and that it would make smudges, or I don't know. It was something to do with the mechanics of it.
Well, but see, I'm 57. I took typing in my sophomore, junior year, or whatever, way back in high school, and that's exactly right. Period, space, start your next sentence.
Right.
Yeah.
Now it's just one space.
I'm still doing two.
I don't think anybody will say anything.
What's the downside to that? I mean, there's not a lot of downside risk.
Well, it just became a debate. So we were just talking about that, different generations. And are we hopping into the speaking of generations, right? Like, this is a really good segue.
The only last thing on that previous topic about communication is that we like to encourage people to pick up the phone or walk down the hall whenever possible. Sometimes it's not efficient to do that.
Yes.
But holy cow, if somebody actually answers their phone and you say, hey, I need this, that, and the other, or hi, how are you, Joe?
Exactly.
Just thought of you. Mm-hmm. See you later.
Perfect.
It's wonderful to actually talk to your people.
I love it.
So this next article, you're going to like this one, Peg. So your new workers are Generation Z. Get ready. Battle-scarred, they're sober, driven by money, and socially awkward. A throwback to the 30s.
Okay, so
funny, right?
replay that. Okay, so and what is the age group of the channel?
Here it is, right here. Now I've got this stuff underlined here.
Okay.
Generation Z, and I'm going to do those for Generation Z totals about 67 million people, including those born roughly between 1997 up until a few years ago. So maybe 5 years ago, so 2013.
So if you look at that, see, that overlaps slightly with the millennials, because they're saying the millennial generation in some cases were 2001 and 2002.
Well, this article says Generation Z. Oh, yeah, this one says millennials, according to them, are 72 million people born between 81 and 1996.
Yeah,
that's how this person's defining it.
It's so interesting. That's why, as we stated earlier in the show, depending on the media resource, that will differentiate slightly. But I think it's all still good information. So
it's a group of almost 70 million people, about the same size as as the millennials. And what they're saying is that these folks are... they're more eager to get rich than the past three generations. That's kind of interesting. They're less interested in owning their own businesses. Huh.
Generation
Z. Yeah, the new ones. Yep. They are more competitive, very pragmatic, practical. They're also more anxious, and they're reserved. They're quieter than the millennials.
Well, it's funny. Huh? Yeah, that is interesting. Wonder what's making them so quiet. Maybe because of
it's the cell phones
and the technology.
It could be.
Because we
they're
don't
all
talk
using
anymore.
cell phones. Why talk?
That's right.
I'll just text you.
That's true.
They're also the most racially diverse generation in American history. Almost half are a race other than non-Hispanic white. Generation Z is filling immense gaps, and workers are trying to adapt. LinkedIn and Intuit have eased requirements that certain hires hold bachelor's degree. We're seeing that in some of our areas where in the past you may have said, absolutely, I won't talk to somebody unless they have a degree. if they have experience, we're talking to them.
Well, and the reason what we're even bringing all of this up is because this is all about our topic being "You're the boss?" ? Well, part of it is understanding managing different generations differently,
Right, and being adaptable.
Yes, I mean that's going to be incredibly important as the boss. Is who is your audience and how are you responding to that?
So again, they learn more new information much more quickly than their predecessors. That's a great thing. They've introduced phone videos to teach young workers how to do certain things in the business. It's not natural or comfortable for them to necessarily interact one-on-one. Isn't that interesting?
That is yes, but it goes back to our technology of the one-on-one and the quiet. You know, they've got the phone.
Their demographers see parallels with the silent generation, a parsimonious batch. All right, parsimonious.
Parsimonious. Oh, Alan, can you
Alan,
look up
what's that
parsimonious?
Mean? Born between 1928 and 1945, they carried the economic scars of the Great Depression into adulthood while reaping the rewards of a booming post-war economy. Generation Z is setting out in the workplace at one of the most opportune times in decades with the unemployment rate around 4%. So they really are hitting the wave at the right time to get out of college.
Well, now is the time.
Start a career, yeah.
Right. It is so true because, I mean, as we stated earlier, there's so many jobs. So does it say, I mean, I'd like to know how to attract these guys here.
The share of college freshmen nationwide who prioritized becoming well-off rose to around 82% when Generation Z began entering college a few years ago. The lowest point, this is funny because, I was in college a little earlier than you. The lowest point was 36% in 1970. So in last year, it was 82%. They want to become well-off. The lowest point was 36% wanted to become well. They just didn't want to become well.
Well, it's funny because with Allie, I told you our daughters, Allie and Lauren, 17 and 14, so they would be this Generation Z, and I completely see everything you just said.
You can see it. Quiet.
I see it. They're quiet. They're determined. They're driven. They're they want to do well. I mean, and they're going to work hard to get it. I mean.
It says they have a stronger work ethic than the previous group.
They're workers. Both of them
They're scared. They're not going to get the good job that everybody says they need to make it. 30% of 12th graders wanted to be self-employed in 2016, which has measured these attitudes back to the 70s. That's the lower rate than the baby boomers, Generation X, and most millennials.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
It's just interesting. They said they'll work hard. They'll sacrifice sleep. They'll do whatever they have to do to get the job done.
I've got to tell you, I see
cool.
it. I see it with Allie and her friends. I see this. And they're all are hard workers. I mean, hard workers. Now, what was the word that you used for the silent generation?
Oh, here we go. Parsimonious.
Alan?
Unwilling to spend money or use resources. Stingy or frugal.
Ooh.
Stingy or frugal.
I can
Cheap,
see that.
miserly, close-fisted,
okay.
penny-pinching.
Well, there we have it.
And the funny thing, and this is my own perspective, kids have a great, their creature comforts are amazing.
Right.
Compared to 30 years ago.
Amazing. Such a better generation.
Better cars.
And they're going to be
the car
more
actually starts. Usually when I got out, when I was a teenager, the car, you never knew. You just didn't know if the thing's going to work or not.
Right. Isn't that interesting?
That is very interesting.
Parsimonious.
Parsimonious.
All right. That's the word for the day.
Thank you,
use that
Alan.
in a sentence and in the workplace.
Parsimonious, you miser.
Okay. Mr. Stewart of College Works Painting said he wasn't aware of any depressed employees 15 years ago, but now deals frequently with workers battling mental health issues. He said he has some workers. He said smartphones may be partly to blame. Much of Generation Z's socializing takes place via text messages and social media platform. A shift that has eroded natural interactions.
Which we've seen.
Interesting.
That's why it's the silent generation. That makes a lot of sense.
Getting employees comfortable with face-to-face interactions requires work. We have to coach interns. If you're sitting 5 seats away from a client and they're on the corner, go talk to them. You have to actually ask them to go talk to people.
Now I see that
they may not be obvious to us.
Right. I can see that though.
Yeah, I do
so
too.
managing this Z generation, Pete, seems like it's going to be a little more challenging.
And we have to change our recruiting practices. We'll talk about that when we get back. There's a financial software maker that started changing how they reach out to people because they couldn't get any responses.
Oh, yeah, when we get back, because we're all recruiting right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's dig into, so we're going to dig into Generation Z.
This one company, large company, broadened its efforts to include hundreds of schools and computer coding boot camps to capture a diverse applicant pool. So they're doing things. They never did before.
Parsimonious.
To learn more about today's topic, call 614-306-7922. Now, back to more business talk.
Parsimonious.
It's like, parsimonious. We're talking today about what it's like to be the boss and all the different things that are coming at you at once. And go back to the good news for a second. I wanted to mention this, is that one of the reasons this was good news, that Boeing has things piled up. Between Airbus and Boeing, they have $1 trillion in orders for planes. That's their backlog right now. $1 trillion worth of planes.
Wow.
Which is good news because, and this was the cool thing, the global boom in air travel, driven by a lot of economies that are doing really well, it's adding 100 million passengers a year to the ranks of people that are flying. That's a lot of people.
That is a lot of people.
So
that's good. That's good.
We need more planes, right?
And right before the break, we were talking about Generation Y, the different generations. And
Right.
you talked a little bit about recruiting differently, because right now recruitment is big.
Right.
So what is your recommendations for recruiting differently for Generation Y?
Well, I think you've got to get a few folks in a room and talk about how you're doing it now and what are all the different options. You have a lot more options than you did a long time ago, and you've got to do things differently. You got to reach out.
How did that one company do it? Was it?
They started going to a software. They were looking for software developers. They started going to tech schools.
Oh, going to
in
tech
their areas.
schools.
Yeah, they're in a fairly big metropolitan area, and they started going to tech schools to look
Okay.
for software writers, which doesn't seem like it's a huge leap, but you have to do something like that. And we have heating, cooling, air conditioning dealers that are doing similar things. They're getting to know the trade schools in the areas, and they're developing relationships. And they're sitting in on one of our companies, the manager that needs people. He's going in, sitting in on classes and meeting these young people as they're going through school to get to know them, so that when they get done, they have 3 offers. He's got a chance at hiring somebody.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of
Which
sense.
sounds like it's over and above, but it's not. You've got to have them.
I like that. That's good. That's good. Generation Y, the new generation coming up, and we're starting to employ them.
Yes, we
so
are.
they're just now getting into our workforce, is what I'm hearing you say, Pete. Or they're a couple years in.
Yeah, they're in.
Well, it was 1996.
96 is where it kind of 96 to just a few years ago. That's where it started.
Oh, it started in 1996.
Correct. Millennials is before that.
Yeah. So the 96ers.
So my kids are all millennials. I think it'll stay that way.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
And so my kids are the Z's.
Here's some Z's.
It was funny because originally they were saying...
Did you pick up some of those attributes with your own kids?
I did. It was interesting because when somebody had said, hey, your kids are millennials, and they were using the words to describe that, I thought, well, that just doesn't sound like them. Yeah. But I always thought, because they had told me at the time that it ended, I think, in 2001, which meant that Lauren at 2004 would have been a cusper, which is on the cusp of any generation.
Yeah.
And that Allie was actually a millennial, and I never thought it fit.
Huh.
That, I think.
Well, they're just. It seems like they're a little more conservative. They're not drinking and doing drugs as much. They're not.
They're not. There's a statistic in there.
They're more careful with money, which is not a bad thing at all. You know?
I see it
and
all.
they're hungry to get a job.
I see it
cool.
all. Well, very good. So we're back on to who now. You're you're a boss? Question mark. So now, oh my!
Look at that one. That happens a lot. What does it say, Peg?
We see a picture of Dwight Schrute and Steve Carell from The Boss. I mean, from
The Office.
From The Office, yes.
Which is a great show. If you want to see what not to do,
oh my
watch
gosh!
that.
And it says too many bosses.
Yeah.
How do you cope? And I think this is an interesting statistic. So Pete and I are business coaches, and we coach, businesses all over the U.S. mostly. And I say that not world, but North America. And
right.
One of the things that we've always gone as a guideline is when you're getting to about 5 direct reports, maybe 7. That's when you're getting like a little. It's getting heavy.
Spread a little too thin.
Yeah, a little
right?
too thin. We need to make some adjustments. Well, one of the first things it says here now. Bosses now manage on average, and this is an average. 9 direct reports, and it is up from 5 in 2008.
So 2008, just a few years ago, 10 years ago, it's almost double.
I mean, wow. So, I mean, that seems pretty high to me.
Uh-huh.
But it says managers are less likely to provide good feedback and coaching when they don't understand how their employees' workflow is.
That is a really interesting thing that I got out of this, and we do encourage our managers and business owners to spend a certain amount of time with their employees and actually help them with problems within their work area so they understand what their challenges are.
I think that is so smart. In fact, Pete, we were coaching someone the other day saying that because there was, have you ever been in that situation where you have one employee telling you one thing and another employee telling you another?
Right.
And you're wondering what's right.
What's the truth? Yeah.
And B, you know that there's a system breakdown. So what that person was going to do is actually spend time just sitting there and analyzing and figuring out, okay, what is the flow? What am I seeing?
Yeah.
What should it be?
Right.
And it really, we were saying you need to understand what your team is
take
going
an
through.
hour and observe.
Exactly.
Or take a half a day and go out with somebody. And in some of our sales organizations, we have the sales managers and the owners of the business go out on calls with people so they understand what the customer's issues are. They hear them firsthand because sometimes things get filtered out. And what this is saying is managers are less likely to provide good feedback and coaching when they don't understand what the actual employee's workflow is. If they really haven't done it, they can't understand it. And
it's hard to manage something you don't understand.
Managers should set, here's the positive side of it, managers should set clear goals, learn to clearly communicate their priorities, know the work their employees are performing, that's what we talked about a minute ago, so that mindless never minds are unnecessary and overloading doesn't happen. Alignment starts at the top. Wow, we talk about that.
We talk about that all the time. That is good. Well, that's good.
So one of the challenges, and here, these are some tips that they give, and I'd like you to comment on this, Peg. Robert Cross, a professor of leadership at Babson College, has been researching workplaces for the last 20 years, said there's a right way and a wrong way to manage people. 4 things that he says bad bosses get wrong. 1, expecting people to know all the answers in the moment. Good managers should hire people who can find the right answer quickly, not browbeat them into over-preparing for meetings by trying to anticipate every question.
I like that.
Give them a break. When that attitude cascades down, it creates huge amounts of churn internally as people try to get ready, which in a lot of cases, it's unproductive.
I like that.
Number 2, not being okay with some ambiguity. You have to be okay with ambiguity, saying it in a positive way. Good managers are willing to move ahead without having everything planned out in advance. That's how you get things done. The more people can focus on how do we move ahead and respond rapidly versus developing a perfect plan, the better.
I like that. I agree with that.
3, mistakenly believing that everybody has to be in every meeting. Oh yeah, we're big on this.
We're big on this.
Yes. Think about your meetings, your routine. How often do you have these meetings, and who really needs to be in those meetings?
And if you're listening and you want an analysis of your meeting and your rhythm and your content, Pete and I will do an audit of your meetings and a general overview if you're interested in that. Okay.
Number 4, avoid this, is creating context of fear. Good managers recognize that intimidated employees don't share anything, and they don't share their ideas.
Of course not.
Of course not.
The fear, right. And it's interesting, and Pete and I working with all these different companies as coaches, it's not like you're purposely being fearful that as a boss, you're creating that outcome. But here's some tips, is if you don't see your team sharing a lot with you, if you feel like there's things you're missing and you can't figure out why, it means it has a lack of trust. There's something going on and you're creating. And in one case, I'm going to tell you what the person was doing to create fear is they were a very confident, very strong individual.
Yep.
And what they were doing is intimidating people because they were super intelligent, like they knew their stuff. They were less warm. They were less welcoming. They were less approachable, meaning there wasn't a warm smile. There was no small talk.
Okay.
It was always business.
So not enough connection.
Not enough connection. You've done it. Yeah. And so now we're trying to soften that up by creating more connection.
Right. The other thing that they talk about in here is that we are because we have more employees reporting to us, right? And we've got multi-departmental teams working on lots of projects, right? So sometimes employees think, well, I've got to help everybody. They've already got 15 things they're involved in. And number 16 comes in the door and says, hey, I need your help on this project. And you can get people that have identities, high-performing workers. They can be susceptible to being overloaded. And as you've mentioned this before, Peg, is that you're kind of the parent at the workplace.
Right, as a boss.
You got to protect your employees from becoming burned out by being overloaded, by trying to juggle 15 things at once. They just can't do it. And sometimes this is something that we talk about too, is false expectations appearing real. In 160 interviews with men and women across 20 organizations, including all these different groups, all workers told them they successfully said enough and put up boundaries to regain control of their day, and that they really didn't have a backlash from that. So it's okay to say, wait, I've got these 4 things I've got to finish today. I can work on it tomorrow morning.
I'm glad to hear you say that. I just had a conversation with someone about this, and it was an executive, and I said, you get what you tolerate. And if you keep allowing this, you're training your people on expectations. And they thought that they needed to get back within an hour. Now, it was for an internal customer service type of thing.
Yep.
But it wasn't good or healthy for that individual. They were losing sleep, not getting their work done, working extra hours.
To get the other work done.
To get other people's, yes.
Yeah.
So I was like, you need to be more into control and tell. And you know what the thing is, though, Pete, what you just said, though, is if you tell your expectations and share that beforehand, then that'll be okay. Yeah. Don't surprise people with it. Say, this is what you can expect, and this is what I'll deliver, and you'll do it in a cheerful, smiley way.
Yeah, and there's certain days of the week, or some departments like accounting, the last week of the month or the first week of the month may be really rough for them. So please don't give me a big project during this time period. And most of the time, according to this, people will respect your wishes, and they'll help you, right?
That's true. Very good.
So we've got to teach our employees to protect themselves, because they don't have their boss as much as they did. They have their boss about half the time that they used to.
Oh, right.
Right?
Right, because now
they don't get to see them as much.
It's the work is doubled.
So it's even more important to develop your people, right? If you have less time with them.
Right.
They've got to be capable.
The time's got to count. The time's got to count. And so if you want to hear this show in its entirety, go to our website. And that would be takeactionbusinesscoaching.com.
There's a 98.9 FM icon, and when you click on it, you can take a look at past shows by topic and listen to a show.
Yes, we also have blogs on there as well as our TV shows. So there's lots of content that not only can you digest, but directing one of your team members or a coworker or a peer to this could help them as well. And that's what we're here for, is to help others learn, grow, and be able to apply that then to your circumstance.
Awesome.
This has been Business Talk, your business, your success. Sponsored by Take Action Business Coaching. The opinions expressed were those of the participants and may not be the views of the staff, advertisers, and owners of the station. Advice given was not intended to replace that of your business advisor. For more information about the topics discussed today, call 614-306-7922. 614-306-7922. Tune in next week at this time for more Business Talk, your business, your success.